Ready for a deep dive into some powerful poetry?
I'm ready.
Today, we're looking at In the Darkness of Shards,
Oh, interesting.
a collection by Catherine Castillo.
Okay.
It's about heartbreak and healing told through free verse poetry, and they're all arranged chronologically.
So we're following a story.
Exactly. Like we're getting a front row seat to this relationship and how it all falls apart.
You know what I find fascinating about Catherine's work?
What's that?
She creates these really vivid images and metaphors.
Yeah.
And she doesn't shy away from tough emotions.
Yeah.
But her use of language makes it so relatable.
You're right.
Even if you haven't gone through the same thing yourself.
Okay, so let's break it down.
That's good.
It starts with this whirlwind romance, right?
Okay.
She describes meeting her partner at a train station.
A train station.
Yeah.
Instant connection.
Love at first sight.
Like something out of a movie. I can see it.
And they have all these things in common.
Like what?
Well, they both love space. Movies like Inception and Interstellar.
Oh, grub.
Even their introversion.
So many shared interests.
And right away, you see her using symbolism.
How so?
For instance, she describes those early days as falling into Jupiter.
Wow.
So it's more than just like a fleeting romance, you know? It's like being pulled into this massive unknown thing.
I get that.
That feeling of being totally swept up.
Totally.
Who hasn't felt that in a new relationship?
Yeah, for sure.
The excitement, the Eskimo kisses, the yellow blanket moments.
Oh, you love that.
It's almost like you can feel that warmth and hope just radiating from those first poems.
Absolutely.
And that makes the shift.
What shift?
When things start to go wrong.
Oh, right.
So much more powerful.
Makes sense.
It's subtle at first.
Okay.
These little lows creeping in, concerns being dismissed, and her anxiety, which was kind of manageable, starts to feel like a real burden.
Like it's weighing her down.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And that leads us to the poem.
Which one?
Fake future. Fake future.
Fake future. Fake future.
This is where the cracks really start to show.
All right.
And the main theme here is broken promises. In fact, all those big declarations at the beginning.
In the early poems.
Yeah.
Marriage kids.
Okay.
Even a Fibonacci sequenced engagement ring.
Oh, wow.
And it's like,
what?
She's using that Fibonacci sequence, that symbol of perfect harmony, to highlight how their relationship is becoming more and more out of sync.
Like dissonant.
Yes.
Exactly.
What felt so destined and balanced is just slowly unraveling.
That's tough.
And it's heartbreaking to see how those
Right.
words, the ones that built up so much hope, are now being used to hurt her.
Oh, I see.
And she starts blaming herself,
Right.
claiming herself.
For his change of heart.
Wow.
Like she's questioning her own role
Yeah.
in ruining their fake future.
That's so sad.
Isn't it?
It is.
And that self-blame,
Yeah.
it's a classic reaction to emotional manipulation. When someone's constantly undermining your reality, you start to doubt yourself.
Doubt your feeling.
Exactly. You might even believe that you're the problem.
Right.
Which, of course, is what they want you to think.
It's all about control.
Exactly.
Oh.
And it's a powerful example of how
what?
these poems that seem so personal
Yeah.
can actually speak to these broader patterns of behavior in relationships.
I see what you mean.
Then we get to the poem,
Okay.
Who Broke Whose Trust?
Okay.
Catherine finds these Post-it notes
Post-notes.
from a past love,
Oh, no.
full of promises that sound eerily familiar.
You mean like the ones her current partner made?
Exactly.
Ooh, it's gotta hurt.
Of course she's upset by the discovery.
Yeah.
But it's his reaction.
His reaction to the Post-its.
To being caught.
Oh, okay.
That's really disturbing.
What does he do?
It's not just that he gets angry and denies everything.
Right.
But he actually turns it around.
Turns it around how?
And blames her.
Blames her.
For having trust issues.
For finding the notes.
For overreacting.
Oh, wow.
For making a big deal out of nothing.
So he's basically
gaslighting her.
Making her question her own sanity and memory.
That's classic gaslighting.
And it sets up this pattern.
What pattern?
That we see over and over.
Okay.
Throughout the collection.
What do you mean?
No matter what happens, Catherine is always the one.
The one what?
Getting blamed for their problems.
Even when
it's clearly not her fault.
Yeah.
It's a way for him to control the narrative.
Control and avoid responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And for someone like Catherine,
who already struggles with anxiety, that constant invalidation can be so damaging.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to poems like My Anxiety and Therapy Because I Want Us Back.
Therapy Because I Want Us Back.
Here we see how her anxiety isn't presented as something they share, but as her burden to bear.
Like it's her problem.
Exactly. Again. He doesn't want to talk about it.
Oh, he dismisses it?
Completely. Minimizes her feelings.
Ugh, hate that.
Makes her feel like she's overreacting.
That's the worst.
And this lack of empathy is such a clear sign.
Sign of what?
Of a relationship that's just not healthy.
Okay, I see.
When your partner constantly invalidates you, it just erodes that foundation of trust and safety.
It's essential to have that.
And emotional safety, too.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like trying to build a house on quicksand.
Oh, I get it.
No matter how hard you try.
It's not going to work.
It's just going to collapse.
That's a good analogy.
And Catherine, she is trying. Yeah. She goes to therapy.
Oh, good.
She pushes for couples therapy.
Wow.
Anything to get them to communicate better.
She wants to fix it.
Yeah.
What about him?
He's totally resistant.
Really?
Disengaged. Refuses to even admit there's a problem.
Well, that's a bad sign.
Right.
Yeah.
That unwillingness to go to therapy, it shows a lack of commitment.
Commitment to what?
To their future, you know?
Oh, wait.
Like he's not willing to work on things.
I see.
And for Catherine, who so desperately wants to save this relationship, that rejection, it just makes those feelings
what feeling?
Of self-doubt and inadequacy.
Oh, of course.
Even worse.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's so sad to watch her trying so hard while he's just...
emotionally unavailable?
Completely.
Like he's checked out.
Totally checked out. And this starts to affect not just how she feels about herself.
Okay.
But also her sense of self.
Her sense of self.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, we see this in the next part of the collection.
Okay.
His constant need for validation and his tendency to compare her.
Compare her to who?
To his past loves.
Oh, yikes.
It all starts to chip away at her self-esteem.
It's subtle.
But it's so damaging.
I bet. It's like he needs to be reassured all the time. About what? About everything.
Like his
looks.
Okay.
His accomplishments. Like he has to be the best of the best.
And when she doesn't give him that,
he makes her feel inadequate.
Odd was the word she used.
Right.
Like she's not good enough.
It's almost like he's projecting his own insecurities, right?
I think so.
Instead of dealing with them himself.
Yeah.
He's trying to control her.
Mold her into someone who will constantly boost his ego.
And it's so sneaky.
How so?
Because sometimes it's disguised as like concern or even affection, you know?
Give me an example.
Like he might say, I just want you to be the best version of yourself.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Or, I know you can do better.
Right, right.
But the message is, you're not good enough as you are.
And that's got to be tough to hear.
Especially from someone you love.
You start to question everything.
Your judgment.
Yeah.
Your self-worth.
You might even start to believe.
What?
That you need to change who you are.
To be loved.
Exactly.
It's heartbreaking.
And it's exactly what happens in Best of the Best and Odd.
Those poems are rough.
She talks about feeling like she's constantly being judged.
Against this impossible standard.
Never measuring up.
And it's not just superficial stuff either.
Like her appearance.
Right. It goes deeper than that.
It's about her essence, you're saying.
Exactly.
He wants to control
everything.
How she thinks. How she feels.
How she expresses herself.
It's like emotional suffocation.
It really is.
And then in Weaponized Vulnerability, things get even darker.
Oh, how so?
He reveals this past infidelity.
Oh, wow.
But then he dismisses her concerns about it.
Wow.
Is his own vulnerability as a shield.
A shield from what?
Criticism.
Okay.
Accountability.
So he's basically saying,
look, I was vulnerable with you. Now you owe me.
Wow. That's manipulative.
It's a way to shut down the conversation.
Avoid taking responsibility.
And Catherine, being the empathetic person she is,
yeah,
she falls right into the trap
of putting his feelings first.
And it makes this manipulation so effective.
Because it preys on her empathy.
And her desire to be understanding.
But it silences her own needs.
And the cycle just continues.
It's like a runaway train.
And then we come to this series of poems that really capture the emotional turmoil.
But their relationship.
Yeah.
Which ones are those?
Yes, that is a no.
Okay.
The space between us, will you hold my hand?
Wow.
And panic room.
Panic room.
It's like everything's escalating.
Yeah, all those unhealthy patterns.
The emotional neglect. The broken promises.
Right.
Putting on a show for everyone else.
Instead of actually connecting.
It all comes to a head in these poems.
And what happens?
Catherine tries to reach out.
To bridge the gap.
But he's just not there.
Emotionally unavailable.
Like he's built this wall around himself.
And sometimes that can feel even worse than a physical barrier.
You're so isolating.
Lonely even when you're together.
It's like being in a desert.
A desert.
Surrounded by sand, but dying of thirst.
You're close, but not really connected.
No nourishment at all.
That's a good way to put it.
And she's yearning for something more.
Intimacy.
Validation.
Just a sign that he cares.
But he's not giving her anything.
And she retreats into her panic room.
It's such a powerful image, right?
It really is.
That feeling of being trapped.
Nowhere to turn.
Always waiting for the next blow.
It's a visceral representation of the toll that this kind of abuse takes.
And finally, she starts to see things clearly.
The relationship for what it is.
This toxic dynamic.
That's destroying her.
We see this realization in poems like
Which ones?
Unmathing.
Okay.
White Flag. Strange Withholding.
Strange Withholding.
Long Cold Nights.
Okay.
And Take a Bow.
Take a Bow.
It's like she's unraveling their connection.
Seeing those unhealthy patterns?
The financial dependence.
Oh, wow.
The emotional neglect. The gaslighting.
It's all there.
And there's this feeling of being strangely withheld.
What do you mean?
Like he's holding back.
Holding back what?
Something essential. Something that would let her really connect with him.
Like he's offering crumbs, but keeping the whole loaf to himself.
Exactly.
And that leaves you feeling so empty.
Always wanting more.
It's like emotional starvation.
And then there's that final therapy session.
In Take a Bow.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It's brutal.
How so?
He's totally checked out.
Unwilling to even try.
Doesn't take responsibility for anything.
Or even acknowledge her pain.
It's chilling.
Like watching someone turn to stone.
Their heart just hardening.
Wow.
And for Catherine, it's the last straw.
She can't take it anymore.
She realizes she can't save the relationship.
She can't change him.
And she can't force him to be someone he's not.
It's a moment of loss, but also liberation.
You think so?
When you accept the reality, no matter how painful, it frees you.
From that manipulation.
It's like she's raising the white flag.
Surrendering to the truth.
But there's hope in that surrender.
What kind of hope?
The hope of healing.
Okay.
Of rediscovering herself.
Of building a new future.
Based on respect and real connection.
But before she can get there, she has to deal with what happened.
The wreckage of the past.
We see her doing that in Mourning and Aftermath.
Those are powerful poems.
She's grappling with so many emotions.
Like what?
Lingering love.
Okay.
Anger.
Yeah.
Heartbreak. Betrayal.
She even talks about sleeping with the enemy.
Right.
And seeking refuge in her panic room.
That panic room keeps coming back.
It's like a symbol of her isolation and anxiety.
That inner space where she hides.
But it's also a prison.
A reminder of the walls she's built.
And in these poems, we see her starting to
break them down.
Confront the pain.
Allow herself to grieve.
It's messy and raw.
Confusing, too.
But it's necessary.
And that's where she introduces this idea of
a trauma bond.
Yeah, can you explain that a bit?
It's a bond that forms
between who?
The abuser and the victim.
Okay.
Based on this cycle of abuse and they're like little bits of kindness.
So the abuser creates this traumatic experience.
Could be verbal abuse.
Yeah.
Emotional manipulation.
Even physical violence.
Right.
And then they follow it up with
affection.
Apology.
Which reinforces the bond.
Makes it hard to leave.
It's almost like an addiction.
Should those moments of kindness?
Even though you know it's not real.
Like being caught in a spider web.
You struggle to break free.
But the more you fight,
the more trapped you become.
And it can happen in any kind of relationship.
Romantic.
Family.
Even work.
That cycle of hurt and reconciliation.
That's what keeps you hooked.
And Catherine's poems, they really bring that to life.
Showing how those glimpses of kindness kept her there.
Even when she knew it was wrong.
Like sleeping with the enemy.
It's a powerful image.
It captures the complexity of the trauma bond.
And it shows how important it is to recognize those signs.
Of an abusive relationship.
And to understand that those good moments
don't erase the bad ones.
It takes strength to break free.
And courage to admit what's happening.
It's not a sign of weakness.
Not at all.
And recognizing that trauma bond.
It's the first step towards healing.
Rebuilding your life.
With healthy boundaries.
And that's what Catherine does in the last part of the collection.
She moves from mourning to
closure and rebirth. It all starts to come together in the poem Closure.
Oh, yeah.
It's like she's finally seeing things clearly.
Stepping out of the fog.
And what I find really interesting is that she doesn't just blame him.
She takes some responsibility.
She does. She acknowledges her own role.
How so?
Talks about how her past might have made her more vulnerable to his manipulation.
It's a really insightful moment.
It is. Brave, too.
She's taking ownership of her healing, you know?
Yay.
Realizing that spark she felt wasn't destiny.
But manipulation.
And she chooses to heal.
Wow.
Chooses self-love.
Powerful.
Refuses to be a casualty.
A casualty of what?
In his war.
His war?
Like his own internal battles.
I see.
And that's what makes this collection so universal.
You think so?
We've all been in relationships.
Where we lost ourselves a little.
Compromised our values.
Ignored red flags.
And Catherine's journey.
Yeah.
It reminds us that it's never too late. Never too late for what?
To walk away.
From anything that's hurting you.
Exactly.
It's like she's saying, I'm taking back my story.
Yes.
Defining my own worth.
Choosing myself.
So inspiring.
And as I was reading these poems, I kept thinking...
About what?
About the collection itself as a form of closure.
Interesting.
By turning her pain into art. She's reclaiming her voice.
Taking back her power.
And turning her experience into something...
meaningful.
Something that might help others.
Who are going through the same thing.
Like she's taking those broken pieces and making a mosaic.
A beautiful, resilient mosaic.
And that resilience is what makes this collection so powerful.
She doesn't just survive.
She thrives.
Comes out stronger.
With a new sense of purpose.
And a deeper understanding of herself.
And she invites us to do the same.
To do what?
To really look at our own relationships.
Identify those patterns.
That aren't working.
And have the courage to walk away.
From anything that dims our light.
It's a powerful message.
This deep dive into In the Darkness of Shards. It's been quite a journey.
It has.
What stands out to you about Catherine's story?
I think the honesty.
Yeah.
The vulnerability.
She doesn't hold back.
Not at all.
Lays it all out there.
The pain, the confusion.
The anger.
But also the triumph.
It's a reminder that even in those dark times.
There's always hope.
Potential for growth.
Transformation.
And those tough experiences.
I think it'd make us stronger.
Lead to healing and self-discovery. Catherine's poetry is a real gift.
It is.
A testament to the power of vulnerability.
And the power of art.
We're not alone in our struggles.
Healing is possible.
And we all have the strength to find closure.
Write our own stories of resilience and hope.
It's something to think about as you go about your day.
Absolutely.